Broncos country. Happy Friday night, Denver Broncos faithful. I am Kodiak Broncos, joined with the amazing Crushin It with Miles Smith. So make sure you follow him in the description down below. Either way, we've got a great stream. All right. We've got free agency this upcoming week. How about Max Crosby to Baltimore? Didn't expect that one. We're going to touch on
Dude.
all that. We're going to touch on all of that on tonight's edition of Vocally Orange and Blue, I guess is what we're going to call this, because you are listening to the two best vocal cords in Broncos country right now. So you want something that's easy to watch and easy to listen to, make sure to hit subscribe and also make sure to join the chat as well. Miles, how you feeling tonight?
Man, I'm feeling good, man. We've been on the Friday content grind. It's the one afternoon that I get to do some time, but we were talking about this all week, dude, and I am so goddamn glad that we actually nailed down some time to get a video, man, because I have been wanting to do a free agent video. I've been wanting to work with you guys, so it's awesome to get back with you and get something worked out here. But free agency, man, it's gonna get wild. And again, like you said, like we'll touch on everything, but like I mean, just throw us into this, man. Like fastball me here.
Yeah, I'll fastball you. So there's been a couple moves that we've already made throughout this free agency cycle, in that we have re-signed Alex Palczewski, and also Ben Powers is going to be back with the Denver Broncos. All fastball to you. I don't have Powers, staying on my slide, but that is something to be that is something notable, because honestly, I'm not mad that he's staying, but I am a little surprised, at the number that he is staying at. But you know what? I get it. But just walk us through it. Walk us through what we're getting with Ben Powers again, and the dynamic that we're getting with Palcho, because we got news on these guys like 4 hours apart. We got a Palczewski contract and a Ben Powers staying notification. So what did you think, Miles?
So yeah, I 100%. So Ben Powers to me is kind of a tale of two halves of the season. Because first half, and we were talking about this before we went live, where Ben Powers in the preseason, the early part of the season, absolutely blowing really both of us in all of Broncos country away. Just playing absolute stalwart left guard next to Garrett Bowles. He goes down, and then it ends up being this flip-flop dynamic between him and Palcho for the rest of the season once he got back healthy. I thought it was an interesting decision. I'm in the boat that I'm not mad. I want to see what a recovered Ben Powers looks like again. I imagine he returns back to full form. I think a lot of it's chemistry right now, just keeping the status quo on the offensive line, because we saw some of the flashes that they put together this season, even if they were putting it together with a couple of Band-Aids. Obviously, Palczewski got a lot of runtime. I really liked what I saw from Palcho this season. My thought coming into the offseason was that Ben Powers was going to be the cap casualty and Palcho would slot right in at left guard. But I certainly think that right now you still get a lot of that versatility. You get Ben Powers back at left guard, and Palcho can slot right back into that extra lineman where we saw him flourish early in the season.
Yeah, of course. And, I remember preseason, I thought it was a little rocky, especially that San Francisco game, the first one. But, as it went along, he was more and more comfortable. And then week one against Tennessee, I felt like, they had a tough matchup with Jeffrey Simmons there and T'Vondre Sweat. And I feel like, Powers was not charged for a single pressure that day. And then, first 5 games of the year, what surprised me about the line the first 5 games of the year was how good the run game was, especially with a healthy J.K. Dobbins. And then, unfortunately, Powers having a great season, tears his bicep or whatever. And Matt Peart comes in London, which I feel bad for him because he was a UK boy, and he ended up getting hurt on the third play of the game. But I remember thinking during that game that may have legitimately tanked our season had we rolled with Matt Peart for the rest of the year. And then Alex Palczewski, man, the guy who went from filling in to at McGlinchey's spot the year before during Tampa Bay and during the Raiders game. And then he was the reporting eligible guy on the early part of the season. Then he ends up becoming so valuable to the team as a backup guard that once he gets back, or once Powers gets back, you could deploy him in their eligible spot. That went to Frank Crum because Palczewski was too valuable for you to be out there, and you needed a 9-1-1 situation. Palcho can play every side of the line. So obviously I got a Palcho jersey in the background, you've already.
I gotta get me one. I gotta get a matching one, dude.
Oh, of course. You've already touched on it, but what were your thoughts about Alex Palczewski's third season in the NFL?
I think Palcho's jump from year 1 to 2 to 3 has been, I don't want to say meteoric, but it's definitely been, it's been good enough that us Broncos fans are having legitimate conversations about Alex Palczewski. And if you want to talk about priority in-house free agents, I think everyone was kind of hammering the Alex Palczewski button because of what he means to the team. And I can't wait to see him just continue to improve. But time after time this year when he was filling in, it really looked like the line didn't miss a beat with Palcho, whether it was in the run game. It did feel like the Palcho picked up right where Powers left off as a run blocker. Maybe there was a little excuse me. Maybe there was a little bit of degradation in the pass blocking. I think that was just him getting adjusted for a minute. But I certainly like the Palcho deal. I think he played great in year 3, and whether or not he's deployed as the extra O lineman again like he was, or whether they find another way to deploy him, or whether he wins a training camp battle, I think that he is really too valuable to let go. Maybe in the future he's a guy that I don't really want to manifest this, but like he's a guy that teams are going to have their eye on if they're short an offensive lineman and they feel like they're one guard away from making a push. Like either way, you're going to get a lot of value out of the guy, whether it's on the field or getting picks at some point.
Yeah, of course. And, Palczewski, in an era where offensive line depth doesn't really exist in the NFL, we're lucky. We're very lucky with Palcho. We're also very lucky that Forsyth has stepped in and played well at points, although there is still a reason that is Wattenberg's starting spot. But either way,
for sure.
Yeah, can't be happier with Palcho. And then, a guy who we also re-signed, our only 2 re-signings this far, I believe, have been Alex Palczewski and Michael Bandy. Okay.
That one's interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah, talk a little bit about it.
Man, that one had to piss off David. That had to be the piss in his Cheerios the day that got announced, because I think Bandy does a couple of things well. I think he's really a great value, and I mean great value, Wes Welker. He's a little slot guy that I think runs routes decently well. From what we've seen, he's got decent hands. He's a guy that can run underneath, and I think that a guy really with Sean Payton calling plays, he likes having a guy like that. And I think we've seen that historically. I couldn't pull you any names out of my ass right now, but you kind of get the idea. Yeah. And I think he's just a guy that the Broncos like. I think they like him on scout team, and there's obviously a reason that they preferred to bring him back over somebody, say like an A.T. Perry. And you saw it too when he got his score against Green Bay, how the team just kind of rallied for him, how Nixon Sutton ran down to get his touchdown ball. Like, he's a guy that this team likes. And I think that does big for him going forward. I don't know that he's necessarily going to make it through the preseason. He might be another guy that sits on the practice squad, but it's going to be, I didn't mind it. I didn't really feel a way about it. I was just kind of like, you know what, that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. And, Bandy came in and he fielded some punts in place of Marvin Mims against Houston in particular. And I remember, oh goodness.
Yeah, that was a disaster.
Yeah, I was like, not having Marvin Mims should not actively be giving points to the other team. Okay. Mm-hmm. That being said, he is one of those like locker room guys. And, maybe he is just one of these Sean Payton guys. Pretty much all these Sean Payton guys, I can't stand hardly any of them. But you know what? I'm fine with Michael Bandy, as long as you keep him like as a practice squad reserve, like hybrid player, like a practice squad, step up in case of emergency, break glass sort of button that we got there. We've got Logan in the chat right now.
I didn't see that.
We've got 8 minutes, almost 9 without addressing the big horse. So it is Friday and Alex Singleton we still have not gotten any re-signing news with Alex Singleton. And yeah, that's interesting. But he said, you watch Orange and Blue today. Can't believe it. Andrew Mason wants Lloyd on, and said on the show Singleton was the weakest link on D, and teams targeted
I was saying
him.
It here.
Yeah, Mace was a Singleton guy. Now, with Devin Lloyd in particular, I don't like it's so tough because I'm just not of the belief that we can add another contract to the defense. But with Lloyd, if you were to go out and get a guy like that, then at least you're going to get a playmaker. At least you're going to get a playmaker on the defensive side of the ball, even if he does, have his lapses in coverage, because it can't be any worse than Singleton. And you actually get a linebacker who gets some turnovers, which I think is what we were sorely lacking on this past year. But yeah, talk a little bit about Lloyd and Singleton.
Oh boy. All right. So obviously last time we streamed together, I was literally pounding my desk for Devin Lloyd. That was, I think, something that we spent the longest amount of time on, was talking about some of these linebacker free agents. And Devin, and like you said, Devin Lloyd is 100% a playmaker. I think that he was one of the sole reasons that Jacksonville defense was as damn good as it was last year, because we saw them make some crazy plays down the stretch. Obviously, he helped them shut down the Broncos. It was Devin Lloyd is a guy that I absolutely think this team could use. I think he's a guy that comes in. I think he'd mesh well with the guys that are in the locker room. They're all dogs. And it's and I put this on my thumbnail, but it's widely believed that Justin Strnad will be in new pastures next season. I think you need a guy that can not just replace that production, but just go toe to toe with anybody that comes out on offense. Obviously, inside linebacker has been a problem spot. Alex Singleton has contributed to that. I thought he was okay year one. It was a ostensible improvement. It was a visual improvement from what we had before him, but Singleton this year, there were so many times on defense where you could point out exactly the blown assignment, and it was most usually Singleton on a running back or a tight end. I can think of a couple of times over the past couple of years where Alex Singleton has he's gotten taken to fucking Gapplebee's on a wheel route. This is a fucking Maserati drag racing a goddamn Ford F-150 that has maybe 3 gears in the transmission. Okay. Alex Singleton, and May said it best, and this comment said it best. Singleton has 100% been the weak link on this defense. I got a lot of respect for the guy, but as a player, I send a locker room guy like him to Tennessee to put that defense together. Send him to Green Bay to replace Quay Walker. Just do not put him back in orange and blue in 2027 or 2026.
The only way I'm fine with him being in orange and blue is if he's Chicago's plan for replacing Tremaine Edmonds, which would that be a good plan? Absolutely not.
No.
But no. Especially with the standards that Chicago is trying to have and the jump that they are trying to make. But yeah, man, I think I've talked about this ad nauseum because, I think as a fan base, we're just fear mongering. I think we're fear mongering because there's been a lot of reports from certain outlets that are so certain that Alex Singleton is going to be re-signed. And it feels like, for the past 5 days, yeah, exactly. For the past 5 days, I've just been like, whew, 10:27 past meridian right now. And we still have not had a Singleton re-signing news. And you know what? I'll take it. Now, last year, the DJ Jones contract re-sign news did leak at 11 p.m. on that Sunday night before free agency. So we still got a little ways to go, but Mile High Mims, Bryce tweeted today that if Singleton makes it to Monday, he thinks that there's a very good chance he goes elsewhere, which thank goodness, because we need to have higher standards, man. Like you said,
100%.
Respect the guy, love what he's done for this team, but at a certain point, you need to move on from your key liabilities, okay? A lot of people are just like, well, I want to see, this defense needs continuity. And the way I put it is, no, it doesn't. Okay, it needs to be better than what it was.
It needs to modernize. You need to give Vance Joseph more ammo to work with in the middle of the field, because that has consistently been the weak point for as long after Singleton's first season, really. I brought this up before the show, but I think you'd get better play out of Lavelle Bailey, who's on a reserve future deal right now. I genuinely think Lavelle Bailey could come in and do a much better job than Singleton.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. But the bar for Singleton is not very high. The bar to replace him is not very high at all. You saw our best game from our linebackers this year was Casey,
Greenlaw and
Strnad and Greenlaw, and they played fan-freaking-tastic. There was no other game where we got even good play from the linebackers, I would say. Solid play, sure. But man,
usually that was from Strnad's side though, or Greenlaw's side. Wherever Alex Singleton wasn't, it was usually that side that you were getting that solid play out of.
Yeah, and everybody wants to be like, well, look what he did in the divisional round against Buffalo. Look what he forced the fumble. I'm like, did you guys forget how many yards Buffalo rushed for that game? Seriously. He was still a huge problem, and you're not in a position to where you can just rely on your key liabilities on the defensive side of the ball, or even give them a raise, like certain outlets are trying to say.
Because wasn't he primarily a special teams player for Philadelphia before we brought him in?
Yes, and then in 2022, I think we may have had an injury to Griffith or something, And then Singleton comes in and he had a really, really good first year with the Broncos in 2022, but then he ends up getting overpaid in free agency. 2023, he looks awful. And that was, I keep going back to that because that is what Singleton looks like without Benito becoming Benito, without Zach Allen truly turning into a game record. So before all these guys had substantial leaps and bounds, heck, even Surtain went from great to best defensive player in the league or into the 2024 season, or at least winning the Defensive Player of the Year award. And Singleton is a merchant of our defensive line. Okay, he gets all these tackle stats, but he finished 5th lowest in the entire NFL in tackles for loss percentage amongst linebackers, 111 linebackers. And on this defense, that's just simply not good enough. We just need more.
Absolutely 100%. And I think that's been, I think that's been the conversation on Singleton within the fan base. I really think that it's only those couple of outlets that are really pushing for Singleton. And my message to George Payton, if he somehow sees this, the fan base cannot fathom bringing back Alex Singleton. Do not do it unless you want a riot in Dove Valley.
Yeah, like you've seen all the stuff on Twitter lately about, George Payton, just from speculation and leaks, and just because other AFC teams are doing things, the Raiders have been very active. They traded Max Crosby tonight.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, of course. And the Ravens, they added Max Crosby, and then the Chiefs, they traded away Trent McDuffie. But the other side of that is they now have number 29. So while they didn't
get in front of us.
Yeah, exactly. So while the conversation is they didn't get better, at least every team is being active. And, Sean and George have said that you need to be selective with where you throw your darts in free agency, with, what you do and what you swing at and what you don't. That being said, you only have 23-ish million in cap space or something like that. Maybe 34 if you restructure Quinn. Either way, man, I don't know, man. Just don't re-sign 49. It's just not a good idea. Like, he is a clear liability. And, the pro Singleton people, I love how anytime you try to have a conversation with them, they always started out with, you don't know ball, instead of respectfully, here's why we should re-sign him. Like, it's always a you don't know ball thing instead of, whatever. I actually do know ball. And I know that you probably shouldn't pay your aging linebackers who are going to be 33 years old that have had an ACL tear that have only going to get slower.
Yeah, and Chris Eddings put it good in a comment there too. We do need turnovers, and Singleton just wasn't forcing them. And he also threw that out. Like he's out of position making tackles for after a back has gotten a first down or after a tight end's caught the majority of first down. It's like, you have to, my last point on this is just, you absolutely have to get better at this goddamn position, because it has been a problem ever since Trevathan and Marshall have left. Like, come on. Like Todd Davis was okay for a few years, but other than that, what have we had to hang our hat on at linebacker? And this is a team that's had some legendary middle linebackers. John Mobley is the guy that comes to mind, like, immediately. Like, you can do it. Go do it.
Yeah, of course you could do it. So, yeah, once again, I'm not going to just beat a dead horse about Singleton, but, we are through Friday without getting an extension. And once again, a lot of people are thinking that if he gets to Monday, then he's going to be as good as gone. There was something else that popped up tonight from Andy NFL. I want to touch on this because Andy NFL, obviously, great draft mind on Twitter. Go check him out at Andy NFL with 2 Ys. That being said, there was a report about Devon Achane potentially becoming available. And I don't know if we're trading number 30 for him, but, it seems like Miami is interested in keeping around Jalen Waddle, but who knows with Achane? Okay, who knows? But either way, any ideas on, how we could attack the running back position? Obviously number 30, it's not exclusive to trading for Achane, but any ideas on what we should do there?
I like the Achane idea to a certain point. I think with him, you get an absolute home run hitter, a proven home run hitter. That is, this guy is all gas, no brakes. Don't let him go around a switchback. This guy can fly, and we definitely saw that firsthand a couple of years ago in a certain game that we execute people for talking about. My issue is I don't know if trading a first. I don't know that you need to trade your first for him. I don't feel that trading 30 would be a sin for him, just because it's essentially it's a glorified second round pick. Is kind of where I'm at. Like I feel like everything past 25 is almost a glorified second round pick. But I feel like you could round out a little more value, move a little bit of cap around without having to give up that first and potentially get a shot at one of these higher echelon kids coming out of the draft. But I like the idea of going and getting Achane. If you do have to move 30 for it, it's a decision you can make. But with Kansas City having 2 picks, with Vegas having 2 picks in the first, I think you need to hang on to it. And maybe you can use a player on the roster that we're not sure about to just as ammo. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
no, but Andy does make a really good point. Being at 30 is a really tough spot to be with our needs. Where I think though that there's a little bit of wiggle room is that I think isn't this considered a relatively deep linebacker class?
Yeah, it's a very deep linebacker class.
I think if you trade at 30, I almost think you have to lock in like Anthony Hill in the second round. You have to find a way to get Anthony Hill. Unless we take a wide out at 30, and by that point, I think a lot of the top guys are going to be down. Who did I think I mocked Chris Brazzell, wide receiver at pick 62. Maybe that's what you do. If you trade 30 for Achane, I do think you are getting much better getting Achane. I think, but still, I think there's this glaring gap of there is no power in that backfield. It's all glitz and glam, really. I mean, Harvey's receiving ability, we didn't down. You and I have talked about this a lot, but down to down, Harvey was just really hard to watch this season. You would get the speed factor for sure and the explosive ability with Achane, and I'll stop beating a dead horse here. But I just think that you need something else at running back, though I would not be mad at getting Achane.
Yeah, of course. There's another guy I really love, Mike Washington. I don't know if you've looked into him that much, but he is sick, man.
You were talking about him during I think Horsepower Hour earlier in the week, and I was paying attention after you brought him up. I don't think he fell to me when I was doing the draft. It's either that or I just didn't prioritize it that early. But I from what you've said about him, like I think this guy could absolutely be a home run pick for Denver if they're able to get him. I think he's everything that they need.
Yeah, of course. I think literally 6'1", 223. I genuinely think he's like JT reincarnated. Like that's how I feel about him. Now, JT was still a work in progress. He wasn't a perfect prospect, but he had that insane athleticism and he was just able to bank on his tools while he was still learning the running back position. And by week 17 against Jacksonville, his rookie year, he runs for like 250 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's like, all right, this guy finally put it all together. Now, going back to the number 30 talk, I know you talked about some receivers, but there are 6 receivers that I'd be fine taking in the first round. Okay. A lot of people are talking about Romeo Doubs. It seems like there's a very well-connected NFL insider who thinks that Romeo Doubs to San Francisco is pretty much a done deal. So I don't think you need to worry too much about that. I don't think we want to over extrapolate our cap space into the wide receiver position. That being said, there are some receivers I would like. I don't think Boston is going to be there. I think his range is like 20, probably 25 is his floor. And then Casey Concepcion, that's another guy that a lot of people really like. I don't think Casey adds anything to this team that we don't already have is the problem, but I think he does everything. He's kind of like a mix of Franklin and Mims, just at a higher level of what they do receiving-wise. And then Omar Cooper Jr., man, I think if you want like a little chess piece on the offensive side of the ball who can play on the boundary and separate in the slot, that I really like him, and he's a good yak player.
If Cooper falls, you have to take him at 30. Like that's if Omar Cooper somehow falls to 30 and really like Kenyon Sadiq's not on the board, you have to take Omar Cooper. I don't think he's going to make it to 30 at all. I had a question about your thoughts though on a guy, another running back, probably more of a day 3 prospect, probably a round 6, round 7 guy, maybe late round 5. How did you feel about Adam Randall out of Clemson?
Really liked his game, man. You turn on the tape and, the size speed score is obviously great. 6'2", 230. I think he ran a 4.5 flat. Did he not? And, you watch him out of the backfield at Clemson and he just looks really, really good for a guy who just started playing the running back position. And, he is going to be a relatively older running back entering this draft again, I think. So I understand why fans would be a little bit soured on that just based on what we did with our second round pick last season. But, I
Right.
think he complements RJ pretty well. One of the things, though, is that he's a really good receiver. And I think it'd be good because I think you could have like a do it all guy. You don't have a tell. And you have a guy who's 6'2, 230. I don't think he necessarily quite plays to that strength, but he is very fast for his size. And I'm kind of curious as to why he didn't convert to tight end if he has that level of size. But yeah, no, I think he looks good. He's definitely somebody who, Jamari Taylor is another guy who I'd be happy with if they kick the tires on at day 3. Demont Claiborne, I would love to upgrade the Jalil role there. But yeah, I know you really like Adam Randall. So tell us a little bit about him.
So Randall in my research, so again, like you said, like a guy that just switched to the running back position. I might actually need to pull him up because I found him on NFL Draft Buzz is just like really once you get to day 3, you are taking straight up flyers. And really, I think if you're going to take a flyer on anybody, I think that he is a guy that physically is worth taking a swing on. Again, I need to find him on here real quick because I wasn't anticipating coming to this, but it is he is eluding me for some reason. Hang on just a minute. But no, I definitely think that he adds a little bit to this backfield that we don't have. And assuming that running back isn't an early round priority, I think if you want to take a swing on a guy in round 5, round 6, maybe even round 7, if he falls that far, because again, he is an extremely raw prospect, just considering the fact that he just barely made the switch this season. What I do like though, production, 814 rushing yards on 4.8 a carry, 36 catches for 254 yards out of the backfield, 10 rushing touchdowns. I think he's a guy that can come in and, like you said, do it all. And I think Denver has sorely been missing a guy that just is big, that can pound down the middle, but that can also do a little bit of everything. And again, there is going to be a lot in his game that he has to develop. There is a little bit of an injury history as well. He tore his ACL in 2022. But I certainly think that if you want to take a late round flyer on kind of a high upside guy, I think Adam Randall is absolutely your day 3 running back swing that I think could be your potential Kyle Monangai of the 2026 draft.
Yeah, of course. And, talking a little bit about some more prospects, like Adam Randall is definitely a guy that I would love for them to target, round 4. Maybe, you go there with the Saints pick if you're not certain he's going to make it to the next one where you have at the bottom of the 4th round. But, Chris Bell, man, I don't know how much research you've done into the wide receivers, but he's somebody that I think a lot of people were talking about, early on in the process. And then unfortunately he does have that ACL tear.
Mm-hmm.
Full disclaimer, guys, I'm not really a Chris Bell stan. I think I did my pre-combine draft notes or whatever, and I think he was either my wide receiver 13 or 14. I think I bumped him up just slightly ahead of Malachi Fields after that horrible combine Malachi Fields had. But I just don't really like his acceleration, deceleration. I just don't think he can play that real receiver role. And also he has that ACL tear I think he's going to be cleared by training camp, but still, he wasn't really one of my favorites. But do you have anything to say about Chris Bell? Like the playmaking ability is there, like the long speed acceleration is definitely there. And I just think his downfield production, I feel like it was rather, I'm not going to say Mickey Mouse because he still made it happen, but I felt like it was the result of ACC coverage busting rather than him just beating a quarter. Like that's how I felt about him.
Where I'll play devil's advocate is no matter who you're going against, like you still got to have a level of skill to toast somebody, ACC or not.
Yeah.
What production wise, I do like what he is putting on the field, and Louisville's not exactly a school known for quarterbacks. So again, just playing a little bit of devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
A lot of the time too, like it does feel like wide receivers come back from ACL tears relatively well in the modern age. I know Sutton had a little bit of a longer run up than I think a lot of Broncos fans would have liked. But I don't hate what's here for him. 4'4", you're getting a 6'2", 220-pound guy that I definitely think could develop into a guy that you can just toss a jump ball up to. I think he could be a really good red zone target. I still like Chris Brazzell more than I do Chris Bell.
Yeah.
198, 6'4", ran a 4.37, 1,000 yards at Tennessee in the SEC. I think if you're looking for a guy that I think you could potentially develop into a number one, I definitely think it could be Brazel, and maybe I'm just a little higher on Brazel than the average guy, but and I'm looking at NFLDraftBuzz.com. I don't know if you've ever used that website, but he's ranked 6th in the class here, 86.4 player rating to them. Again, that 4.37 40 time. Something that I think you could do is you could almost send him on the Marvin Mims career path, where you deploy him at punt returner for the pure speed for the first little bit. That would give Mims more of an elevation. They don't love his frame, though. They say it's lean for his height. And so, durability questions are going to be abound here. Does have a shoulder injury. And this is something that kind of turns me off about bringing him to the Broncos, is he does have problems with drops, concentration drops, particularly. And then they don't like his lateral agility. So he's kind of more of a straight line guy, gets a little grabby. So potential, Riley Moss of OPI there. And then they don't love that he saw a bunch of tight man coverage. I think, though, that those are things that you can coach out of a guy, especially a guy that putting up that much production in the SEC. And if he's that raw, I think you bulk him up a little bit just to maybe get him a little bit of durability and get him some size to fight off tight man coverage on the line. But I definitely think that he is a guy that you could put a punt returner and develop for a couple of years, get him some snaps. But Chris Brazel right now is probably one of my favorite wide receivers that I think Denver can legitimately get in this draft.
Yeah, there's 3 receivers, or no, there's 6 receivers that I have first round grades on. There's 3 that I have like fringe second, third round grades on, or I shouldn't say fringe second, third, because Chris Brazel is no doubt a second round grade for me.
100%.
Really, really like his game. And I feel like with him, Tennessee, it's hard to not helmet scout. I get it, but he doesn't carry a lot of the same red flags that guys like Jalen Hyatt or Dante Thornton or Cedric Tillman had at Tennessee, because Jalen Hyatt, I'm pretty sure, ran like 60% of his routes as go routes, which that's absurd. Dante Thornton had like 25 yards per catch, and it becomes statistically like a level of unsustainable once you get to that territory. But I think if anybody can break the curse, it's him. I think if anybody can break the curse, it is definitely going to be Chris Brazel. He's extremely lean for his frame, and he's insanely acrobatic for being 6'5". Has a really nice catch radius. The only thing is, I feel like his effort runs extremely hot and cold. And I feel like his, how should I put this? Trying to find a way to say what I want to say. I feel like he just did more cardio than anybody else I did. Like there's always, those, screens or clear out routes where, you're not doing a whole lot. You're just stepping back. Like if there's a run play to the other side of the field, you're running like a fake curl route. I feel like he did more of that than pretty much anybody else that I watched. Either way, still another guy I liked. I want to touch on Skylar Bell. This is one of my guys, another guy.
I do have another guy I want to touch on after Skylar Bell too.
Yeah, of course. But Skylar Bell's just filthy, man. You want to watch a guy who's just filthy against lesser teams, just watch Skylar Bell. He looks like, I comped him to small school digs. He's extremely controlled with his routes, so far ahead for a small school guy. And he's not like as good on the in-breaking stuff, but on the out-breaking stuff and deep, he's filthy. He's got great hands, great playmaking ability underneath as well. So I feel like he definitely adds something that, I think there are a handful of guys who I think would be really, really good fits for the Broncos. And I think Skylar Bell is one of them, just because I feel like his skill set is something we don't already have on this team. Another guy is Bryce Lance. I feel like we don't have his skill set on this team either. But yeah, Skylar Bell and Bryce Lance are my 2 favorite guys for the Broncos for adding something we don't already have.
If you want to go day one here, and you want to add something that really, I mean, this guy's been flying up draft boards for good reason. And you've probably got this guy with a pretty high grade as well. Because I think it was Denver Sports 103 or 104.3 that was talking about him really to start out the offseason. Denzel Boston is a guy that I really think if he falls to 30, you have to pick. Denzel Boston out of Washington, 881 yards. I love his frame, 6'4", 212, running a 4.52. I 100% think that he is a guy that I think he's the dynamite that this offense can use. I think he's a guy that you can get jump balls to. He's not going to torch people, but I think his route running is pretty damn solid. And really, too, like I mean, like, he really helped. I think he went to Washington when Penix was having that explosive year. I think he was just kind of getting started there at Washington.
Mhm.
I think Denzel Boston is a guy that you get a good balance of route running, frame, and speed, and I think that he's a guy that could absolutely mesh in an explosive, reliable number one target. When really you are looking for more weapons to add to the arsenal for Bo Nix.
Yeah, of course. No, Denzel Boston's really good. And, bigger receivers are a tough eval because ultimately, it's not a college team's job to develop this guy, who's playing against college football corner. It's not their job to develop them and give them real route running traits, but Denzel Boston has real get open ability. And I know that that's something that a lot of people, look at, with
Mhm.
these 6'4" receivers, the jump ball archetype is kind of, I'm not going to say it's dying in the NFL, but it's not what it once was. Okay.
No.
For a long time, your wide receiver one was pretty much always going to be 6'3", 6'4", and, always are going to be a possession monster.
Throw him a fade in the red zone and you're coming down with 6 points. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And I will say this, Darian Bustamante said Boston didn't look great at the combine. I think he looked fine. Like, yeah, there were some drills that weren't great, but I think with Boston, it's a matter of, just trust the tape, just trust what you see because, you don't know how guys like that, do in that environment. And yeah, I think his gauntlet drill wasn't like great from a guy who's just watching all the combine stuff, but I think I'm not really worried because I didn't think he needed to have a good combine to be, considered in that upper echelon of receivers.
I certainly think the combine can lie both ways. It's I mean, it's the day that can make a Zach Wilson become a second overall pick and a guy that could potentially make one of these receivers fall. I didn't I admittedly did not get to watch the combine, so I don't have anything really to say on that. But just from what I've seen of Denzel Boston, like I'm certainly a trust the tape guy. I'm with you there for sure. What up, Sinbad? I saw Trent in here too a minute ago too. We got some of my
Oh,
guys
yeah.
popping into here.
Yeah. Hilltime Sports. Yeah, what's good?
Yes,
Um,
sir.
Either way, but yeah, no, Denzel Boston, absolute demon. So let's talk about some real NFL news that has currently gone down. So, one of the
Oh.
first comments we got was Max Crosby
Hmm.
to the Baltimore Ravens. Max Crosby is out of our division. Okay. It felt
That's
like,
nice.
yeah, it felt like for years, man, Max Crosby just always had our number. Even in, the past 2 seasons where we've really ramped it up and Vegas has kind of been in free fall mode. Feels like he always came to play against the Denver Broncos. Feels like he always
Always.
had his best games. It felt like he always, would force our right tackle into a couple of holding penalties. And, he would always be getting pressure and always be in our quarterback's face, no matter who it was. So, what do you make of him to Baltimore?
I I'm with you there that it is super, super nice to not have Max Crosby in the division anymore, yelling at Bo that the offense can't hear him. That is one of my favorite clips from the last couple of years. Like, admittedly, like I think that shit's so funny. But Sinbin brings up a good question too. Like, is he worth 2 firsts? I think he is 100%,
Yeah.
and I think really too, Baltimore was in a was not even a weird spot. They were in a bad spot with that defense anyways.
Yeah.
And I know their secondary was admittedly not good, but a lot of that was getting exposed because of their lack of pass rush. I think Trent actually brought this up when we were streaming just a few minutes earlier. But I think the stat was that they had their lowest amount of sacks in 15 years by them.
Mm-hmm.
What I think it means for both teams though is definitely in the short term, I think the Ravens are gearing up to try to kind of they're trying to reload to get back to that AFC North supremacy that they've mostly had for the most part since Lamar arrived. For the Raiders though, and somebody does and so TW brings up a really good point here. Like, Raiders are going to be loaded on picks now because I think they've got pick 1 and pick 14.
Yep.
At this point, like that, they've got some serious ammo to work with, and I'm not going to write the Raiders off from being feisty next year if they can nail down the draft. Yeah, and that's the thing, Darian, they can't draft. But I really like Kubiak as a coach. I really do, and they are going to have that draft ammo for 2027 as well. And again, that really depends on upper management. I think Kubiak's a good coach. I I think it was time for Crosby to move on and to at least go start trying to do some winning, because it really feels like the Raiders were not a serious organization. He was, this signals for me the real start of a rebuild for the Raiders, because it just feels like every year they were trotting out thinking, they're a year away. They're a year away. With Geno Smith, they're a year away. And it just hasn't materialized. And so now I definitely think they're finally tearing everything down. And that I think the Crosby move is really just the symbolic, cherry on top of the teardown.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. And first of all, I want to retouch on this, Darian. We did touch on Romeo Dobbs. I wouldn't be all hoorah for it. I wouldn't be against it either if they did decide to go another route. But we did mention that an insider, a well-connected insider, basically has plugged him to San Francisco. So honestly, I've kind of put that out of my mind. Now, going back to this, is Crosby worth 2 firsts? All right, guys. If I said a number 3.5, what do you guys think I'm talking about? Do you think I'm talking about, I don't know, what is 3.5 to you? You can make of that what you will. 3.5 was what the Baltimore Ravens sack leader had last year. Mike Green had 3.5 sacks. So they needed some sort of pass rush. And the Ravens, man, under Harbaugh, they always came ready for a fight. They've always been ready. They've always been built on toughness and trenches and physicality. And they've kind of lost their identity on the defensive side of the ball over the past few years. I know a lot of that was because of McDonald retiring, and there is a little unfortunate situation happening with Nnamdi Madubuike. I don't know what's happening, but it sounds like he may have quietly retired. I don't know. I don't want to speculate on that. That being said, the Ravens pass rush was not what it once was. And you know what? You got AFC North. You got all these great pass rushers. You've got Myles Garrett. You've got yeah, don't ask my wife that. You've got Myles Garrett. You've got TJ Watt. Now you've got Max Crosby. So you know what? The AFC North,
Joe Burrow's life is going to be hell.
Oh, yeah. It's just, within the nature of that division to have all these pass rushers. But once again, you think about what the Ravens, they value in their organizational history. The tough leaders of the defensive side of the ball. Terrell Suggs with the pass rush, Ed Reed in the secondary, Ray Lewis commanding the middle of the defense. So, yes.
Absolutely.
I think it's a home run trade for the Ravens. I think for the Raiders, the Raiders definitely are not as good now. Like, I'm sorry, but you can't trade your best, one of the game's very best edge rushers and convince me you got better, no matter how good that 14th overall guy is, at least at this point. Okay.
Right.
Could it be worth it in November, December when your rookie's balling out? Sure. Very well could be. Because honestly, if you're the Raiders, you're gearing up for the long haul with Mendoza. Okay. That being said, yeah, I don't know. That saying they can't draft though, but the 2027 class, I haven't really looked too much into the 2027 class. I know it's supposed to be good, but I feel like every class, the next class is always just so much more stacked than this previous one. And I don't know. I will have to look into that. That being said, there are a lot of really good blue chip guys like Jeremiah Smith when he comes into the NFL will probably be a top 5 pick right now. Do you guys think it's possible to get George Pickens still? Miles, take this one.
Oh boy. I think it is. I just don't think Denver's willing to give up what it would probably take to get George Pickens. Jerry's notoriously cheap when it comes to his players until he's I mean until maybe he's trying to trade him. I don't think the Cowboys are willing to budge on Pickens unless you like vastly overpaid. Like I honest to God think Denver would have to send like a Riley Moss and the 30th overall, maybe some other picks. I don't think that's worth it. Right now, I think there are other ways that you can get better at wide receiver. And if Pickens is going to be held hostage, I don't see a reason to go after him via trade, especially considering what you would likely have to give up for him.
Yeah, of course. And I think, this room for all the, how do I throw this? For all the criticism we put towards this room, and, they do need to improve and they do need to take steps forward or whatever. I don't think it would just be the smartest use of resources to do that. Would I love George Pickens to be a part of this wide receiver room? Yes, of course. But if he had to hit the open market, I'd be much more open to it. But now that you actively have to trade assets for him and he's going to be on the franchise tag and you would probably have to extend him, I just don't know how doable or possible that really is. But yeah, there has been no word on Pickens since he got tagged. Simbin Stream says Pickens is a diva. Honestly, I don't mind a diva. I think we need to get a few more dogs on this team. All right. I understand culture. I understand continuity. I understand wanting good guys in the building. Our eyebrowless GM goes to the podium every draft, every free agency cycle and says, oh, it's not about the players that we're bringing into the building, but also the people, So I can imagine Pickens is not on the radar, but I don't mind a diva, man. I wouldn't mind like even a AJ Brown, or honestly, I wouldn't even mind a Brandon Ayuk. The only guys I'm really out on are guys like Tyreek or Stephon Diggs, where they're like proven head cases off the field.
Yeah. You pretty much took the words out of my mouth on that. Somebody did ask, I think earlier, would you like Zach? And then I'll kind of bring in too. So TJ Jensen asks if we would like Zach Wilson to be our backup. And then Darian poked in saying he'd be a good backup if Stidham got moved. I would be 100% on board with that move. And here's why. Wilson's a guy that already knows the system. He's been in Denver. He wasn't here long, but he was here under Sean Payton. I don't think that would be a bad move at all. Plus, he'd get to develop a little more in that Payton system. I don't think anybody really knows what Zach Wilson is anymore now that he's not a Jet. Didn't he have a really good preseason, get himself paid a little bit, and move on under the Broncos? I would not be opposed to bringing Zach Wilson back as a backup. And I think we definitely get to. I think that'd be a very funny dynamic between clean face of the franchise Bo and MILF banging Wilson over there. So, but no, I'd be eager to hear your thoughts. But I would not be opposed to bringing Wilson back if Stidham gets moved.
Yeah, I wouldn't be either. And I mean, the thing is, with Zach Wilson, it'd just be like, ooh, that might be an interesting sort of thing. Like if Sam Ehlinger's put in there, like I would be happy for him. I'd be happy for the opportunity, but I want a guy stylistically who's a little bit more like Bo. All right. And you know what? Zach Wilson could very well come in there and absolutely tank the game for you. But we don't know that. We don't know that just based on what we've seen. Stidham, he did tank the game for us, with that, when he threw that shit backwards. So yeah, no. Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall are in prison with the Jets. Oh man, my heart hurts that Breece Hall is not going to be.
He was my number one target for the Broncos to go get. Like that was my guy in free agency other than Devin Lloyd. And then seeing he got, I made a short about, I'm like, our running back dreams will not be realized in the form of Breece Hall, folks. Free my boy. Yeah. They're holding him hostage.
Yeah. But either way, let's see what else. Pat Bryant's still a dog. Hopefully he built off last season. I've never seen such a high floor rookie wide receiver. Anytime the play came to him, whether it was a block or like a tough catch on 3rd and 8, he made it, man.
Bryant just needs to stay healthy. And I know that a lot of that is out of his control. There were a couple of really unfortunate plays that got him concussed twice in the span of a month. I think Pat Bryant on a fundamental level is Pat Bryant's development like that idea intrigues me enough that if Denver doesn't draft a wideout, he's the only reason why I'm not like completely pissed. I'd still be kind of mad, but I'd be like, you know what? Maybe they like Pat Bryant a lot more than other people do. And I fully agree with you. Like he was probably the highest floor rookie right after Vele in 2024. Like it essentially the same cloth, just a lot younger.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, Vela was the odd man out. I hate to say it during the preseason, but he ended up netting us a sweet early draft pick. I still would have liked to have kept Vela. I think he would have helped during our early season struggles. That being said, our struggles were independent of him.
Right.
Go get Haynes King to be our backup quarterback. I mean, that's interesting. I've seen a lot of people say Haynes King is like Tebow 2.0, but I'm telling you guys,
apparently.
I was in Boulder on August 29th, 2025. That was the first game of the year between Georgia Tech and CU. I'm telling you, Haynes King's running ability is pretty sick. Now, can he actually play NFL quarterback? We'll see. But that'd be fun.
Where's he at? Is he in this draft?
He is in this draft.
Out of where? CU?
Georgia Tech. But
Georgia Tech. Oh, I'm looking. There he is, Haynes King.
Yeah, but the question, it's kind of like a Tebow argument. Like, where do you take him? Because a lot of people feel like he was just gimmicky and like just a college quarterback. But
yep,
I don't know. That'd be interesting there.
That could be interesting. I almost feel like it'd be if you took Bo Nix's passing ability, and like put all of those skill points into run the ball. 4.46 40 at the quarterback position is going to get you picked up one way or another. Like some team is going to be tantalized by that athletic ability there, and I wouldn't blame him. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, of course, it is very interesting. Sorry about that. I pray
that's the fun part about the offseason. It's all bullshit speculation anyways.
Exactly. And I crashed out last night about the bullshit speculation of Singleton. And yeah. All right. I pray we don't wait too long at all the good free agency. Our God, we got a good chance to add some star power. We do. But once again, the Broncos have said you need to be conservative. You need to, pick your spots. You need to choose, the years that you're aggressive. And last year certainly felt like they swung for the fences with Hufanga, Greenlaw, Ingram. And even if Hufanga was only the only real true hit from that class, I feel like I can at least respect the fact that they tried. And it seems like they are going to run it back with Greenlaw and Ingram because, there were circumstances that made them not ultimately have, I think what was expected of them both in year one. I mean, Greenlaw was an injury, but Ingram was on the field. And, talk about Ingram a little bit. What do you think of Ingram in his first year at Denver?
I was going to say, somebody brought up too that we hadn't talked about tight end yet. So that was really good segue into that. Ingram was definitely underwhelming. I don't think everything was his fault. I think there was a little bit of miscommunication at points during the year where and there were some obvious misses from Bo, especially early in the season where he just either short-armed a ball or maybe there was the overthrow occasionally. I certainly think, though, that there was a part where he just wasn't really schemed into the offense a whole ton, because we saw at times when plays were drawn up for him, those plays were hit and he was making big plays. And I still think he's got some playmaker in him. We saw that, I think, in the Eagles game where he made that heroic stretch touchdown to get really Denver back into that football game. I want to give him another year. I still think you go out and you make a move at tight end to improve that position. Whether or not you're doing it in free agency, I don't think super highly of this free agency class for tight end, but I still think there's some intriguing guys that you could go out and get. Isaiah Likely is on the market. Chikakonkwo, I think, is a bit of an underrated name that I brought him up. And Markey did bring up a good point. If you get some blocking tight ends too, you could certainly unlock Ingram. And I think that's a thing too, is just finding those consistent blockers, because Troutman, I don't think, is that consistent blocking guy, which is crazy because he was supposed to be some crazy receiver coming out of Dayton his senior year. But there needs to be this room does need to be addressed. I think you give Ingram another year before you completely fold on him, because another thing too is, like, Sean Payton's system is notoriously complex. I'm interested to see how Davis Webb uses him. And that's what intrigues me enough to not want to shut the door entirely on him yet. But I do think there is some stuff on his end he needs to clean up as well. The drops were a problem. That was just a Bronco-wide epidemic over the season, drops. But I want to give it one more year with Ingram, but I still think you 100% need to address it. And I was just about to talk about that, Broncos fan. I think you could snag Eli Stowers day 2 and be completely fine with that. He's not really... He's not an inline type tight end, though. He's not a true Y, and I think that's going to turn Denver off on him a little bit if they're looking for blockers. He's more of a big slot type of guy that you're going to throw in there as an F. So if you're looking for firepower purely, I think you go Stowers for sure. I still think you need to sign a free agent, though. You 100% need to go out and get a guy, whether it's a blocking guy that's a little bit of an underrated, kind of under the radar guy that's just going to come in and block, maybe make 15 catches, or whether you go out and you get a guy that can be a weapon. They're not wrong in saying that this room needs addressed. It does. I just think I want one more year out of Ingram before I actually put the nail in his coffin.
Yeah, no, of course. And, the thing about Ingram is that it was just, they hyped him up so much, and the Broncos made a big deal about going out and getting him, and then suddenly, oh, he can't block. Like, did you guys completely miss that part of your uh, free agency evaluation of him last year? Or you guys, what was going on there? Like, that's just what I want to know. And why were you just strictly deploying him in roles that I feel like he couldn't succeed on? So yeah, a lot of people are saying Cade Otton. Listen, I'm not really that big on Cade Otton. Like, I get it. He does have a robust wide skill set, but I think, Tampa fans are happy to see him go. And that's something I really value the opinion of.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know, there's just too many mistakes, just based on, what we've seen on him. And there was a blocking chart that had like the tight ends and like their blocking scores over the NFL, the course of the NFL this year. And Otton was towards the very bottom. One guy, a couple of guys who I would really like, I'd really like Daniel Bellinger or Charlie Kolar. And I know the rest of the fan base probably would not be like that on board with those guys like Daniel Bellinger or Charlie Kolar, because they'd look at like the raw yardage and they just be like, man, But the thing is, if you're going to get guys that are brought here to block, at least make sure they're good at it. And that's what you get with both those guys.
I like the idea of Bellinger too, because I do think he does have a little bit of sneaky receiving ability if he gets schemed right. If I remember right, he's on the Giants, isn't he? Bellinger?
Yes.
I like that idea. If you are going to go out and get a pure blocking guy, I think that would be one of those under the radar moves that could pay dividends, kind of a buy low, not necessarily sell high. But I do think he's got a little bit of underrated receiving ability as well that really would just mesh well into the offense. I think he'd be Adam Troutman plus, which I really would be really nice. I think if you get good blocking and maybe 300 yards, couple scores out of him, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because Troutman, he is woefully ineffective as a receiver. And listen, I get it. You brought him in to be a culture guy, and you know what? It was a necessity for how bad of a team you were when Sean Payton took over, that you did have, the Adam Troutmans of the world and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like Singleton, where you just need higher standards as a team.
100%.
Yeah, with a Super Bowl aspiration.
Super Bowl aspiration. Yeah, that's where I remembered him from. Bellinger murdered us that game.
Dude, I remember Alex Singleton chasing him for the first score of the Giants game. Of course I remember that. Of course I remember that. All right, Max Clare or Justin Joly. I love both these guys. I don't know how well-versed you are at the tight ends.
Tight ends I didn't look a ton into.
That's okay. I got you. Max Clare, when he was at Purdue, he was, legitimately one of the premier tight end talents in college football. And, he did everything at a very, very high level while he was at Purdue. He transfers to Ohio State, and I feel like he's just a very good fit for the modern game. He's very savvy on like these RPOs, on these like pro style concepts. And Ohio State ran a lot of them. Feel like he's really good in line. And I feel like he has really good dynamic receiving ability that, 448 yards is very, very respectable tight end production, especially considering what he was sharing the field with at Ohio State. You had Cardell Tate, you had Jeremiah Smith, and you had Brandon Ennis just strictly at the running or wide receiver position. But yeah, and then Justin Joly, man, he's 6'3", 260, but he moves good. He moves really, really well. That's why he's
he's telling me Max Clare is essentially Daniel Bellinger plus?
Yeah, I mean, that could be cool. That could be cool, but
I'd take it.
Yeah, of course. But either way, Clare and Joly are solid. Yes, agreed.
I did kind of cut you off on Joly though. I was interested to hear though, kind of what turns you on with Joly.
Well, what turns me on with Joly is I feel like he's just so fluid for a guy his size. He's 6'3", 260, and he runs routes like he is a wide receiver. He's, a lot of people's tight end too in this class. And I think that was before Stowers completely blew up the combine, but he's one of a few tight ends who can high point the football. He's got toe drag swag. He uses his frame to his advantage. That's one of my biggest complaints about our tight ends. I feel like the guys like Kroll, Adkins, Troutman, I feel like they all play small, which pisses me off. Like, you're 6'5",
no sauce.
6'5", 250. Go out there and make a play. But either way, NC State was so creative with him. In line, moving him around the formations, and he's just so good downfield as a downfield mover. He had great 4-year production, only one drop all year at NC State. Love his route tree. He just knows how to get open. So I'd be really, really. So I think with the combine, Joly is still my tight end too.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I do like to hear that. Yeah, I 100% worst tight end room. Somebody brought up Ben Powers. That was early in the show that we touched on that. That was what, like A block?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, man, we did survive another day of no Alex Singleton extension, and that is glorious. Really, anything else you wanted to touch on with this, man? I feel like we've gone very in depth with quite a bit.
Yeah, we have gone very in depth, and there's a lot of trade talks about Kodiak Sadiq. I will talk about this, and then I will touch on what this Chiefs fan has to say real quick. Would I trade it for Kodiak Sadiq? No, I would not. The reason
No.
I wouldn't is just because I feel like he is a fantastic tight end prospect, and obviously he set all the records at the combine, and that tracks. You know what? You watch him on the tape; he's good. He's really good, and he's a dynamic tight end weapon. That being said, I just don't. Trading up for a tight end, I just don't think it would be worth it because the Champagne offense does not heavily rely on tight end production, regardless of what everyone thinks. I know a lot of people think about Jimmy Graham because that's the era of football we grew up watching, but the average tight end in a Champagne offense averages 450 yards a year, and we are hyper conservative with deploying our rookies. So I just have my reservations on if that would be worth it or not.
100%. I think you said you were going to touch that Chiefs fan that popped in here.
Yeah, of course. Shout out to you, Casey Carson. I love
100%.
love when opposing fans drop in here. So, shout out to you, man. Hopefully you end up liking us. Either way,
I do like his question though, 100%.
Yeah,
John Franklin Myers. If and I don't know how you feel about him, Kodiak, but I felt that he was one of those defensive line anchors that really made the D-line what it was. I think he's a good locker room guy that'll mesh well with your guys on the defensive line. And as well as you're just going to get production out of him. He's disruptive in pass rush. He's good against the run. I think he could fetch 18 mil, 17, 18 mil. 16 is probably lowballing him. 20 would probably be a little overpaying him, but I think he could get anywhere in that range. I think JFM is a damn good player, and there's a reason he was a fan favorite here.
Yeah, man, he's just priced himself out of our range, and it just doesn't make sense for where we are. We already have a bunch of big contracts on the defensive line that are going to kick in this upcoming year, and he unfortunately was just the odd man out. So, usually you have that question of why are these guys available? Well, we got them for pennies on the dollar. Okay,
absolutely. We traded a fifth.
Yeah, it was like a sixth that was like 2 years out. Okay,
yeah.
So we got him for literally nothing, and yeah, that's just how I feel about that.
I do think though that with JFM gone, I do think we're going to see a lot more Malcolm Roach, and I'm not exactly opposed to that. And that I think that does mean unless Denver does something to address the D line, we're going to finally see what Savion Jones looks like, because that game day inactive for a majority of the year. But no, like huge shout to you, Casey. Casey Carzon, appreciate you checking in here, man.
Yeah, big. And Savion Jones, I am a little worried though about who's going to replace JFM because Roach I feel like just doesn't provide that pure pass rush upside. Savion, obviously you touched on it, was inactive for like 15 out of the 18 games that we played in the regular season. So I'm just a little concerned, like no way he can be the singular plan. But Cameron Jordan is somebody who, I'll talk a little bit about him. I think that he said Cameron Jones. I think he means Cameron Jordan. That'd be interesting. I feel like Cameron Jordan would be a great stopgap here. I feel like he would provide that leadership that you've been missing on the defensive line. And I feel like he still has a little bit left in the tank to where it would still be worth it to bring him in for cheap. And I feel like he makes sense, man. He's familiar with Sean Payton. He was a captain with Sean Payton. And I feel like he buys us another offseason before we really – and, worst case scenario, you just cut him before the season begins.
Yeah. Sign him to like a vet minimum or something and work with it there.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Jordan IDL fit, though. He played the 3-4 defensive end in New Orleans. I don't think he was like a pure edge. I think he was like, 6'3", 280. So I think it was he was either 6'3", 280 or 6'3", 291. So he primarily played the 4-eye and the 5-tech and the 3-tech on pass rushing downs. So yes, he would be a fantastic bridge. But either way, I think, shout out to everybody in the chat. I think it's time for me to get out of here. I got to wake up super duper early tomorrow. But
yeah, fair enough, man.
Yeah, man. You guys all killed it tonight in the chat.
100%. Dude, chat was fun.
43 of you in here at 11:18 p.m.
Hell yeah. You guys are real ones, man. You guys are real ones. 100%. I wouldn't be opposed if JK came back, but maybe in a bit of a reduced role or taking a pay cut just because of the injury history. Because I don't think the guy's played a full season.
No, he has. He's played an average of 9 games a year, so he can be a part of the solution, but he should not.
Yeah, he's the break glass free agent. But yeah, dude, I mean, fuck. Thank you, Kodiak, for kind of jumping in here, kind of ad hoc. I shot you a text and you were right on, dude. We were shooting for today, but you got called into work early. But I mean, this has been absolutely awesome. If you're watching on my side, go sub to Kodiak if you like the Broncos. This guy just makes good content. This guy has good takes. He does his research. He definitely is a little more knowledgeable than I am, for sure. But I mean, hey, you're listening to the two best vocal cords in Broncos country, so there's got to be worth something there. But yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe to both of us. I'm pushing for 500 currently. Would like to hit that before the start of next season. Kodiak, you pushing for any milestones? You got anything cool coming out, dude?
Man, I got, I'm going to be working ad nauseum, over the upcoming week for all these free agents. I'm going to do everything you need to know about every free agent we have dropping. Obviously, I'm big on the short form stuff, so keep an eye out there. But yeah, either way, so guys, Miles has a little over 400 subscribers right now. Trust me, I know we can do a lot better than that. So go ahead, go check him out in the description of my channel. And yeah, either way, it is called Crushin It with Miles Smith. It is.
I can drop that tag in chat.
Yeah, of course. It is linked in the description of my channel, but in case it is not, then I am going to allow you to plug it into my chat real quick.
Yes, sir. So, yeah. Just gotta make sure I got my tag right.
Oh yeah, you're completely fine. You are completely
thanks, Inbin. Yeah, there is that plug.
Yep, there you go. Miles Smith crushed it. Either way, guys, appreciate y'all, and we will see you guys very soon. Peace
yes,
out.
Sir. Yeah, I just gotta say, we gotta do this more, man. Vocally orange and blue. It's gonna be the best show on YouTube, dude.
Yes, sir. All right.
All right, take it easy, folks.